How's it going, everybody? Welcome to episode 107 of the Apples and Genos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name's Josh Hutchinson. I've got John Binko with me here today, and oh my God, is there stuff to talk about right now in the NHL? How you doing, John? How you feeling with
I'm
all
good,
these
man.
all these trades coming in?
I'm just buzzing, man. I've been thinking about hockey more than normal. Like I've been thinking about hockey all day. Most days it's most of the day, and today
Yeah.
it's been all day. My boss was like, "How are you?" And I was like, "Oh, we're recording tonight. It's the fantasy hockey deadline for trades today for most leagues, and then the actual
Mhm.
deadline." And she just looked at me with that same glassed over look that people look
I
at
don't
me
care.
with. So, and I was like, "Okay," and she was like, "Have fun." I was like, "I
I don't
will.
get it. I
I
don't
will.
get this at
I
all.
definitely will."
Yeah. No, it's interesting. Yeah, like you said, a lot of the fantasy hockey leagues, their trade deadline is today as well. So and a couple of our major ones that we're in together, the trade deadline is tonight at midnight. So
Yeah.
it's getting down to the wire. I'm waiting for some responses on some trade offers I've made. So I'm hoping for the best there, but
I've seen
it's
Patrick Kane just flying across fantasy leagues and
all over the
trades.
place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
including to you.
Yeah, I picked him up in the dynasty league, so may have paid a little bit too much, but I need to keep up with the other guys that are at the top of the standings there who have
I
also
sold
made big moves.
pretty heavily. Most of
You
my
did.
roster in the A&G dynasty is prospects and picks now. So
You didn't do me any favors there, that's for sure.
I'm not gonna
So
lie to you. I don't care. I don't
that
care
I
at all.
know. I
You're
know.
welcome.
I don't expect you to do me any favors. Don't worry about it. So thanks to Nate, first of all, for covering for us last week. Last week was tough for both of us. It was just unfortunate circumstances. So yeah, so that was really awesome of Nate to fill in and really I don't know, really emulate the format
Yeah.
of our midweek pod. It was really cool. So yeah, thanks again to Nate for that. Thanks again to you all for leaving us reviews on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you haven't done that and you're enjoying our content, please just take a second, leave us a review. We'd greatly appreciate it. It really helps us get the podcast into more ear holes. Uh, also, check out the Apples and Genos Discord server. It's a great place to talk fantasy hockey, get your questions answered, and also receive alerts for when new Apples and Genos content drops. If you didn't already know, this is Midweek Moves. It's Wednesday, March 1st. It's March. I can't believe it. And
I
we're
know.
talking about schedule maximization, who you should be adding and dropping. And we're going to talk some trades, baby. But before we do, we're going to get into the schedule. Let's try and focus. Let's get into the schedule for the rest of the week.
We're locked in.
So for the rest of this week between Thursday and Sunday, Detroit, Montreal, Seattle, and Tampa Bay all have 3 games. Montreal and Seattle both have 2 off nights within those 3 games. And then Detroit and Tampa have just 1 off night. And then Arizona, Carolina, New Jersey, and Vegas all have 2 games with 2 off nights. So probably also very viable streaming
Yeah.
options.
Mhm.
Next week, Anaheim, Calgary, Chicago, and Winnipeg all have 4 games with 3 off nights. Those are the best schedules out there. So streaming from those teams is probably going to be beneficial. Almost half of the league has 4 games. There's a ton of games next week. Toronto and the Islanders over the next week and a half have the worst schedules. So they only have 4 games between the end of this week and all of next week, and they're all on heavy nights. Toronto, though, has a great playoff schedule. So I would be looking for some of those streamer level players that are getting dropped this week. If you're safe in a playoff spot, you're not trying to move up, you're not trying to get into, say, a first or second place where you get a bye through the first round. I would be looking for players to be dropped from Toronto. Guys like, I don't know, streamer level guys like, I mean, who's a streamer level player on the Leafs now? I don't know. Like, there's been so much turnover.
I mean, literally probably O'Reilly, but emotionally not at all. He's not going anywhere from anybody's roster, clearly. So.
Probably not.
Yeah.
But if he does end up on the wire just because of the bad schedule, If you're safe in a playoff spot, I'd be picking him up because he's got a really nice playoff schedule coming up. And then Philadelphia, Washington all have just 4 games over the next week, with just 1 off night. So also teams with not very good schedules coming up. So if you have been streaming players from those teams, I'd probably be dropping them sooner rather than later for guys with better schedules. So for my ad this week, I'm going with Dawson Mercer. He's 41% rostered. He's got 10 points in his last 6 games. He is between 30th and 40th in the league in both shots per 60 and individual scoring chances for per 60 over the last 2 weeks. The only issue is, I mean, he might be pushed down the lineup with Timo Meyer coming over in that deal from San Jose. We don't know yet. Binksy was telling me that it sounds like he's hurt. So he's not going to slot into the lineup right away. So it could be for the rest of the week. Dawson Mercer's still playing on that top line, which is great for him. He is red hot. Regardless, his individual numbers have been really, really good, both counting stats and underlying stats. Hopefully he will continue to produce no matter where he is in the lineup. And yeah, that schedule to end the week for New Jersey is really great. They're playing on an off night tonight, and then they play Friday and Sunday as well. So I would be going for Dawson Mercer. What do you think, Binksy?
Yeah, I dig it. Regardless whether he gets pushed down the lineup or not, like they're going to be that much stronger with Meyer slotting into that top 6. So I think you're still going to be able to get individual production from Dawson Mercer. I'm a big fan of his in general for fantasy hockey. So obviously that's a concern with Meyer, but the injury does seem to be real for him. I just kind of assumed it was a trade-related holdout, but he's being evaluated today, hasn't played yet. Obviously, he's got to move across the country, and New Jersey doesn't necessarily need to rush him into anything. So there's not a lot of immediate concern for Mercer. I think that's an excellent pickup. My ad for this week is Ivan Barbashev, 27% rostered. That's up 14% in the last week. And if I had to guess, that 14% is probably 12 to 13% in the last 36 hours.
Yeah.
He is center and left wing eligible. He was traded to Vegas on Sunday. Barbashev played top line minutes with Marchessault and Eichel in his debut against Colorado yesterday. Barbashev is an unrestricted free agent after this year, and he's coming off a 60-point season last year. He has not had that production this year, but Vegas is tops in the division at the moment. They are really finding a groove, and Bruce Cassidy is quoted as saying that Ivan, quote, does exactly what he was brought in to do. He gets to the front of the net every time. He has a great forecheck. All his details were great for me against Colorado, one of the fastest teams in the league. Cassidy says he plays winning hockey. He knows how to win. Now, Blake tweeted a little bit earlier today that he was off put by Bruce saying in that presser after the game last night, quote, PK, he'll be more on that first than power play, end quote. I'm not quite as concerned about that when accounting for Cassidy's tone in watching that. He put a lot of stress on first in that sentence, right? So in text, it's a little bit more damning than I think in the actual tone that he used. I think it's totally reasonable to expect Barbashev to take a week, take 10 days to learn the power play system for them. And with him being locked into the first line and already familiar with Pietrangelo, I'm kind of banking on him working his way to power play 1 as well. I think there's a lot to like here, even knowing that in St. Louis, Barbashev didn't find a lot of time on the power play, but we're talking about a Blues team that had a loaded power play with offensive talent, right? And it's A, not true for them anymore, and B, he's on a team that doesn't really have that, right? They, in the game against Colorado, used a whole slew of different players in their power play. And I think there's a real chance that Barbashev works his way into that as a facilitator on it. And when pressed about Barbashev, Cassidy seems cemented in his idea of his role for Vegas. He wants him to play with those 2 players, and it sounds like he wants to play with those 2 players all the time, right? Mm-hmm. So they've got 2 games, 2 off nights to finish this week, and 4 games next week, I'm really willing to see him on my roster for 6 games and figure it out later. Blake was a little bit more hesitant, recommended waiting and seeing on that. And I don't think that there is a better spike that you're going to see from a waiver level ad at this deadline, right? Like I think it's entirely possible that you get just a serious streak out of him through the end of the year.
Yeah, I definitely echo your sentiments about Cassidy's comments in terms of I'm not really that concerned about him playing more on the PK than the power play right now. I don't think when they acquired Barbashev, I'm not expecting him to play on PP1 right away in Vegas, even though they have so little offensive depth. But I did expect him to play high in the lineup because they're looking for wingers to play with Eichel, just because Mark Stone isn't there right now, and because of all the injuries that they've encountered this year, just like last year. So I am pretty comfortable with Barbashev where he's at currently. And like you said, it sounds like he's going to get a ride with Eichel and Marchessault, and really there's not really a better situation in terms of 5-on-5 deployment in Vegas. So I really like that for him. And yeah, just I mean, he's a streamer level player regardless. So Vegas has a nice schedule to finish out this week. I'd ride him there. I don't know that I'd be super excited about holding on to him going into the playoffs, just because Vegas' schedule is pretty bad across anyone's playoff schedule. So, but definitely for now, I'm definitely high on Barbashev. So I support that for sure. My drop for this week is Kevin Hayes from the Philadelphia Flyers. He is 33% rostered still. He only has 1 assist and 9 shots in his last 6 games. He's playing with Noah Cates and Wade Allison 5v5 right now. The Flyers as a team have just been brutal. They have a bad schedule coming up. They have not a ton of off nights over the playoff weeks. If you're doing weeks 22 to 24, I believe they have the least off nights in the league. So I'm not 100% sure on that, but I believe they only have 1. So kind of going to be hard to fit into your lineup anyways, but he's struggling. Travis Konechny's out. There's just no one to play with there right now. And Kevin Hayes is really having a hard time. So, and the vibe in Philly just isn't there right now. Tortorella has been really all over the place in the media these days. He's not happy. The players aren't happy. It's not great. The general manager doesn't seem to know what direction they want to be going in. I don't know if there's a plan at all. So, I mean, and then we knew that going into this year. It was just an absolute mess, and sure enough, it is. So, yeah, I'd be dropping Kevin Hayes like it's hot. You extra 33% of Yahoo, I'd be letting go. It's okay. Just move on.
Yeah, it's bad, and it's going to get worse. JVR probably going to get dealt, probably for a bad deal if we know the Flyers. Yeah, I think that's a completely reasonable thing. I think really any Flyers that you're rostering are droppable right now. My drop for this week, probably a little bit more controversial. My drop for this week, Trevor Zegras, 74% rostered, center and left wing eligible. He's got 1 goal in the last 10 games played. He's shooting 5.3%. You can reasonably expect that to regress to the mean, as he was 8 goals in the last 20 games at nearly 20%, and his average somewhere in the middle, right? Unfortunately, he's only giving you an average of 2 shots per game. The per 60 metrics look better on shots here and there, but it's incredibly unreliable. And the same is true of his time on ice. In the last 10 games, he's seen time at 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, and 23 minutes. So you have no idea what you're getting from him right now. It's crunch time in fantasy, and he's just not consistent enough. If you compound that with Anaheim having 1 game left in this week, he's a drop for me. And you might go back to the well next week for the opportunity to stream 4 games and 3 off nights. But probably at positions that you're pretty well stacked on. And that doesn't start until Tuesday in the first of a back-to-back against Seattle and then Vancouver. So obviously there's a lot of bad schedules for the rest of the week from streamer level teams that you don't have any qualms about dropping from. But if there's a player that you're feeling bad about in Zegras, go ahead and drop him and go back to it if you need to.
Yeah, I definitely support that. I think there's nothing to be excited about in Anaheim right now. And I imagine there's probably going to be a couple deals within the next couple days.
Yeah.
I mean, the market is only going to get worse for teams that are trying to sell, because so many of the teams that are trying to compete right now have made so many deals that it's like not a lot of teams need a lot of extra players anymore. Not a lot of teams need to beef up, at least in the East. I guess the Western teams still haven't really
got to do something.
Got to do something here. So we'll see. But I think the market, you're already seeing the market value for a lot of these players start to decrease in the deals that have happened today. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But yeah, I think that's only going to worsen the vibe in Anaheim once they start offloading players. And I mean, there haven't been any bright spots for this team this year. There have not been any stretches where they've been good at all.
Yeah. Occasionally you're excited about McTavish, but if it feels like excitement where you're excited for years from now and not right now.
And like when you compare to the vibe last year, it felt like they were going to take a step this year, not necessarily a step into the playoffs, but just a step into like they were fun to watch last year. They weren't good, but like we had Zegras, they had Troy Terry having a breakout season, and it was just fun. It was fun. The Sonny Milano, Trevor Zegras, like all doing all their fun lacrosse shit. It was at least fun to watch. There was at least a vibe. It just felt like they were really vibing each other and they were having a good time, whether or not they were winning games. Right. This year, it just feels awful. Like they're just getting stomped every night, and no one is playing well at this point. So
makes you wonder about an NHL cover curse if that follows Madden.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, Matthews was on it last year and he scored 60 goals. So I mean, and McDavid has been on it in the past, and I don't think he's ever had a bad season. So I think maybe they just made the wrong choice. I don't know. It's also second season. Like it could just be a sophomore slump, and easy to have a sophomore slump on a team like this where you got essentially no one to play with. So all saying all that. It's really just a roundabout way of saying, I support a Trevor Zegras drop. But I also wouldn't blame you if you wanted to pick him up next week too, if someone else has dropped him, or if you dropped him.
Does seem super reasonable. Yeah. But it's at 74%, it's probably a harder drop emotionally than it is statistically.
Totally. All right. Let's get into some hot topics. I'm going to hand it over to you, Binksy. We're going to do a rapid fire discussion about some trades here.
I gotta peel back the curtain for the listener and the viewer and tell you that this text in the notes is in red with a background of red. It's all caps and it's like 18 font, and it says, "Woo, the trade season is lit," because it is super lit.
This is lit, man.
Unbelievable. I'm having so much fun with this deadline, and we're gonna tease a little bit. Okay, so a couple of comments in the content thread. Reese's Pieces says, "Seriously, I need the boys' reaction on all the fantasy relevant trades that went down." And we're going to do our best to keep it to fantasy relevant. When I went through the list of all of the trades that have happened as of late, there was a lot of deleting. There were a lot of trades that don't really apply to us. So we're going to try and keep it relevant. Blake says, in addition to tonight's epic pod, and this is the real tease, Nate and Blake will be doing a trade deadline special show recording on Friday night and releasing early Saturday morning, plus their Sunday pod. So plenty of trades to talk about. We're going to touch on stuff, and whatever we don't deeper dive into, expect them to go into that for you. Okay. Josh, I figure we just kind of trade back and forth on this list. What do you think?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Okay, first one, top of the list. Most recently, Mikael Granlund to the Pens for a pick. What do you think? Where does he land in Pittsburgh? Does this move any needles for you fantasy wise? Does it affect anybody that you care about in Pittsburgh?
I'm looking at Jason Zucker. I think there's the potential for him to move down the lineup with Granlund coming in, or a guy like Brian Rust. So those are the guys that I don't see Michael Granlund playing on the third line in Pittsburgh. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So nice ad for them, nice offensive depth. I think that's something that they need. But yeah, I think I don't know exactly where he's going to land. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't see him as a third line player. I think the Crosby line is probably staying together. I think Raquel and Gensel are kind of staple to Crosby's wing, but I'm looking at Malkin's wings there, and those two guys, Zucker and Rust. Zucker, who's been very productive at times in terms of fantasy, and then Rust, who's been kind of disappointing this year.
Yeah.
I could see Granlund slotting into one of those two spots, and the other and whoever, one of those two guys being the casualty of that.
That seems completely reasonable. I think hockey-wise, they would probably be better to move Russ down to the third line and let him kind of prey on lesser talent and see how it works out, but remains to be seen. What do we got next?
Vlad Namestnikov traded to the Sharks. So this makes sense. I think he lost his roster spot to Tanner Jeannot. This was spelt out. He just doesn't fit on the Lightning squad. I could see him being somewhat fantasy relevant for the rest of the season just because the Sharks aren't going to have anyone to play on forward. Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him playing at the top of the lineup. But I mean, San Jose doesn't have a fantastic schedule going into the playoffs either. So, I mean, not incredibly fantasy relevant, to be honest. What do you think, man?
They've got a lot going on with Fabian Zetterlund and Andreas Johnson coming in. DFO has Namestnikov slotting in on the first line, but as we've said with various Sharks this year, doesn't really matter to us in fantasy. Probably not.
Yeah,
probably not. Next on line, this is a burner right here.
This is a big one.
Everybody loves this one. We've all been waiting on this one. Jacob Chychrun traded to the Senators by the Coyotes. Ooh, that feels good to finally say.
Yeah,
that feels good to finally say.
I bet he feels great. I think this was a pretty anticlimactic ending, to be honest. The Senators were obviously a team that we've heard had been in on Chychrun for a while. The return ended up being a first in 2 seconds, which is pretty crazy. Apparently, it was due to the Sens being able to not the Sens not needing Arizona to retain any salary because they were able to fit them under their cap. So I think that's why it was so cheap, but it is still pretty underwhelming considering it's been essentially a holdout for a year and a half.
Yeah.
They've been talking about this for so long, and that the price being so astronomically high, I don't really understand why they needed to rush into it like that. But nonetheless, Chychrun, I mean, there's a distinct possibility he could be playing on PP1. He could be replacing Shabbat on PP1 in Ottawa. I don't know that that's going to be the case. It's going to be interesting to see. So there is potential for him to be huge in terms of fantasy relevance. He's a fantastic player, fantastic offensive player, does pretty much everything. And then he's going to be around weapons for the first time in his career, right?
Yeah,
like
finally.
A really nice offensive crop. So I'm very excited for his fantasy value going forward at the end of this year and even going into next, for sure.
Let's circle back to that Chychrun deal. We got a few questions in the mailbag for it. So let's deep dive later.
Okay, sure.
Next in the list, another D-man moving along. Philip Hronek traded to the Canucks by the Red Wings for picks. Where does this put you on Cider?
On Cider?
Yeah.
Well, I think there is no competition for PP1 anymore, so that's nice for him.
What a relief as a Cider roster.
So yeah, definitely Cider owners are probably feeling good. In terms of guys that invested in Hronik, I don't really think his fantasy value is going to change. I don't. I think Cider had been quarterbacking PP1 lately, anyways.
It's been
So
up and down, but yeah, for the most part. Mm-hmm.
I don't think that really. I don't think his value really changes. This is a weird move for Vancouver. We can talk
I don't
about this
get it for
another time.
Vancouver.
I
Yeah,
don't really get it.
neither does Twitter.
They traded the first round pick that they got for Bo Horvat for Hronik. I don't understand it at all. They're another team like Philly where I don't think that they know what direction they want to go in, and they just can't commit. So, very weird deal. But in terms of Hronik's fantasy value, I don't really see it taking a huge hit in terms of the pace that he's been on at least the last couple of months, which is not quite as amazing as it was at the start of the year. So I feel like he'll be steady Eddie. Shane Gossesbear traded to the Hurricanes. That's an interesting one too. What do you think? Like, he's a pretty fantasy relevant player and has been in Arizona. Do you think he gets PP1 in Carolina?
I mean, can you realistically bump Brent Burns from anything? You know, can you realistically do that? Even for a power play talent like Gossesbear, like I don't think that you can. I think you just kind of assume that that's Burns's power play, and they feel a lot better with their second power play or any fatigue or injury issues that arise. I think that's a phenomenal trade for Carolina. I think they moved in a much better direction than what they were apparently considering with bringing back Tony DeAngelo. But fantasy wise, I don't think it's a positive for people who are rostering Ghost.
No.
It doesn't seem like a positive. You're gonna lose minutes. You're gonna lose power play one time. There is certainly a window there where that's different, and if things shake out differently, then I'm happy to be rostering him, and that's found gold. But the way that things look right now, it's not incredibly net positive for fantasy hockey.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think he probably takes a bit of a hit. I wonder, Carolina is a team that Rod Brind'Amour kind of likes splitting his power play up, spreading the wealth, I guess, and having two fairly strong power plays playing 50-50 instead of loading up one and playing them for most of the power play. So I wonder if that is getting another viable option to quarterback PP2 to make them that much stronger across the board. I don't agree with that philosophy, but I could see that being the reason that they did that.
I do think it's entirely possible that in moments where they go on the power play and Burns has been out there getting time, that he goes on to power play one. But I don't think that's a cemented thing. I think that's a moment to moment thing.
Yeah, for sure. All right. What's next?
Ugh, and I'm wearing the jersey in support of my guy for this one. The man, Jonathan Quick, absolutely disrespected and traded to the Columbus Blue Jackets by the Kings and this is a phenomenal return for the Kings. I got to say, I applaud them for doing the hard thing, but I Andre Miller spit on them for actually doing this. Vladislav Gavrikov and Joonas Korpisalo heading back to Los Angeles. Who is the winner in this trade?
Who's the winner?
Who's the winner?
Oh, it's I think it's LA. I think LA wins this trade. I think
and I've heard rumors that Quick is going to be shipped out to somewhere more likely to need him if he's any good.
No, there is definitely value that Columbus got back for this. I think obviously they got a first round pick and I think a second as well.
There were definitely picks accompanying it for sure. Yeah.
So if they're able to flip Quick for something else, that's pretty solid value. Obviously not what we were hearing they were asking for Gavrikov, but these guys are both pending UFAs, and I think Gavrikov is pending UFA. I'm actually not sure, but Korpisalo definitely is. And really didn't have Corpy really didn't have any value coming into this season, but he's had a really good year when he's been healthy. I'm of the belief that I know this is kind of an unpopular opinion. I think Korpisalo is going to be the Kings starter going into the playoffs.
Really?
I'm not. I mean, Phoenix Copley, as much as I've sung his praises, he's not been very good the last little while.
Yeah.
And frankly, I think, uh, I mean, if Korpisalo can be even just okay, and he's been great on a Columbus Blue Jackets team that is dead last in the NHL. I think if he can stay at that level, I think he's their starter, man. I think he's their guy going into the playoffs. Um, so I am all in on picking him up
Are you
right now.
investing?
But
You're investing right now?
this is all vibes though.
Okay.
This is not me being like I like having any insight on the situation. This is all vibes. This is just what I'm feeling. So take that with a grain of salt, but I feel like it's going to be Korpisalo going forward.
I mean, that does make sense. He's got a much steadier hand and experience over Copley, right? Copley,
Mm-hmm.
even right now, no one knows how to feel. Even in games where he's getting the W, he's given up 3, 4, 5 goals, right? So
Yeah.
I will say this. What I do know is that the Kings have gotten much better defensively getting
Mm-hmm.
Gavrikov, right? So what scares me about their goalies is that their defense, especially Dursey, who gets a lot of minutes, are really, really prone to going turnstile and giving up high danger chances. And I think that is seriously limited with them bringing Gavrikov. I don't know what to think about Korpisalo because all year long I have been super hesitant to put any trust in the Blue Jackets and especially in their goalies. So I don't have that same positive vibe feeling about Korpisalo, but I'm really more interested in all of this fantasy wise to see what happens with Quick if he ends up in a better situation and if he can turn that like spite goalying on its face and really have a resurgence in the end of the year. If we look at the track record, he's burnt. There's like no reason, but at the same time, another NHL team spent serious capital to bring him in, even if they're just going to flip him. So somebody sees something that we don't, and I trust a lot of GMs in that regard. So this next trade, and I'm going to let you lead in this one because you pulled some triggers on this one. This is massive. Like they've got to be Cup favorites now.
Yeah, I think so. Patrick Kane, as we all expected the last few weeks, is going to the Rangers. So reuniting Kane with Artemi Panarin, they had ridiculous chemistry when Panarin came over from Russia to Chicago, and he unceremoniously got traded to Columbus for Brendan Saad, which was just a brutal trade. One of the worst trades of all time, in my opinion. But that is Kane wants to be there. That makes a huge difference. He's had an off year. He's been brutal defensively, but that doesn't mean that he's not going to chip in offensively. I think he's probably going to play on PP1. It sounds like he's going to play 5v5 with Panarin and Trocheck, which is fun, and that's a really nice bump for Vinny Schro, friend of the show as well. So that's really great. But yeah, I think Kane, you're going to see him. I mean, I hope you see him increase his point pace because it's been one of the lowest of his career. But I think the last couple weeks, this hot stretch for Patrick Kane, it proved that it's still there.
Yeah.
I know obviously he was ridiculously hot, but I think part of that, this is just me. I feel like he felt the heat. He started getting concerned that teams were not interested.
It did seem
You
like
know what
that,
I mean?
didn't it? Because 2 weeks
And
ago,
so
you and
he's
I
like,
were like, "Is he even healthy enough to make this like a real thing?" And he went
right.
out and was like, "Oh, I'm healthy. I'm
He's
just
like,
not
I'm
happy."
fine. I'm just not happy right now. I think that it's more that situation. Like he was just not happy with the way things had gone, with the way that Kyle Davidson had been selling things off. So I think he's still got some gas in the tank. I'm banking on it,
Yeah, you are.
and I'm I think this is going to be nice for the Rangers and for Patrick Kane owners moving forward.
So before we move on, obviously Kane is who he is. You're going to see a slight minutes dip, but the talent's going to go way up, so we can expect the production to probably be level. Who is this bad news for in New York? Because there's a lot of rosterable and streamer level players for New York that we've been relying on throughout the fantasy season. What's one player that this is bad news for?
Well, I mean, Philip Hedl had been spending some time on PP1 lately. I think there's no shot of that happening again. Vinny Trocheck as well. I think neither of them are going to get power play time at all, especially with Tarasenko there too. There's just no shot. So I think those guys will. It hurts their value in terms of getting power play time. Trocheck though now has better line mates, so that helps him 5v5. And then Hedl's situation doesn't really change. So I wonder if that third line, that kid line, that Lafreniere, Kako, Hedl line gets a little bit less ice time as well now that the top six is so strong. But yeah, I don't know that it. Yeah, I don't know that it hurts anyone too much.
Okay.
I think as a team they get better, and I think the players in the top six, I think their value actually increases because they have better players to play with.
I don't have a valid argument against that. My gut says that Tarasenko gets bumped off of power play 1, and that they balance a little bit better with him moving to power play 2.
Right. No, I agree. I do agree with that.
But I think you're absolutely right. I think in even strength minutes, just the talent level going up that considerably is going to even that out for you. So I think it's net positive for pretty much everybody except for Capo Caco.
Yep, for sure. Gustav Nyquist traded to Minnesota from Columbus. This is a deal. Nyquist, they had been talking about how he's injured and will be until the playoffs. So he was a guy that you could stash an LTIR really easily and then activate him for the playoffs. It's kind of like a free ad. It makes sense. Minnesota has cap issues. So, I mean, not fantasy relevant at all because I don't think Nyquist is going to play for the rest of the year. So
that was really the reason I left it in there. People are going to see that and get excited, and he's not going to play. So
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Moving on in the list, Matthias Ekholm traded to the Oilers by the Predators for Tyson Barrie.
Yeah. So definitely kills Barrie's value. I'm sorry for all of you, including me, that use draft capital low draft capital on Tyson Barrie, hoping for value. You got that value. You're not going to get it when it counts, unfortunately. So that really, really hurts. And then Ekholm, he's going to help Edmonton defensively. Not really a fantasy relevant player, so I don't really see. He did have an assist tonight on a McDavid goal, but other than that, I don't see him really being fantasy relevant at all. So this trade really, really hurts fantasy owners. In other words,
me specifically. Yeah, I dropped Barrie today in 2 leagues, and it hurt like a berry, man. In the latest trade episode for 5-hole, they said dead and buried, which I was like, God, I wish I didn't hear that, so we could title our episode that.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, I don't want to do it. So this is going to be the question on everybody's mind then. Before we move on, is it Nurse or is it Bouchard that goes on the power play for them? What have you seen in this game tonight?
So far tonight, it's Bouchard, which I think is what a lot of people expected.
It does seem to be the case, right?
So if he's out there, I'd be picking him up as fast as possible because he won't be out there long. Luke Shen to the Toronto Maple Leafs, baby. He's back. The human eraser, as Pierre Maguire called him way back in the day. I'm excited about this for the Leafs. It's just a cool story. I think this actually hurts Luke Shen's value.
Yeah, it does.
Because his value is really his peripherals, and the Leafs have the puck all the time. So he's just
Right.
not going to get as many hits and blocks as he was in Vancouver, where they're getting stomped defensively. So not great for people that have Luke Schenn.
Truthfully, I left this on the list just for you for the story.
Pierre Engvall to the Islanders from the Leafs. There is word that he may play pretty high in the lineup for the Islanders, and may potentially even start with Horvat, which I think is very interesting.
That is interesting.
Keep an eye out for some line combos for the Islanders, because Pierre Engvall may be a sneaky pickup off of free agency.
I don't think you have to rush with their awful schedule coming up over the next period. So probably don't have to rush, but do keep an eye on it.
And he is an advanced stats darling. So it may be one of those situations where he finally gets an opportunity and then is able to break out. So we'll see there. So yeah, definitely keep an eye on Pierre Engvall. And here I'll hand it over to you.
Really? I was going to let you take the wheel.
Okay, I guess this is still a Leaf relevant one. Rasmus Sandin to the Capitals for Eric Gustafsson and a first round pick. Rasmus Sandin, I think this is great for him. And anyone that owns Sandin, I think he's going to get an opportunity in Washington. Just wasn't going to get it in Toronto to continue his development. I think he's got upside to be a top 4 defenseman. I think he could potentially play PP1 right out of the gate in Washington. Because John Carlson's still out.
Yeah.
And I think he's a valid option there. So if you're seeing line combos with Sandy and on PP1, grab him right away. And then as far as Gustafsson goes, I'm not even sure that he's going to stay a Leaf for the next few days. I don't really understand the fit.
It doesn't seem like there's space for him, does there?
Other than just depth, and like a potential injury replacement going into the playoffs. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him flipped, maybe even in a package with that first round pick for somebody else. So, So I would, good for Sandin, bad for Gustafsson, essentially. All right. Okay. I'll let you take a couple here.
Okay. Leafs making so many moves, man. Finally.
Mm-hmm.
Jesse, Pool Yarvi traded to the Hurricanes by the Oilers. Is there a world where Jesse Puljujarvi absolutely takes off and is a difference maker in Carolina, or is there just too much talent for him to even make a difference for them?
Yeah, I think not this year. I don't think that he is going to get that opportunity to play that high in the lineup and really flourish. But I am excited for him going forward that he is out of Edmonton, because it just wasn't working out. They weren't high on him. So in dynasty leagues, I'd definitely be either hanging on or trying to acquire him.
Same.
Because I don't think his value is very high right now. No. I don't think he'd be that hard to acquire. So it's a guy that I might invest a little bit in, just because going forward, it might be a nice option. But yeah, in terms of the rest of season, I don't think I'd be in a rush to pick him up yet. And then Jake McCabe to the Leafs from the Blackhawks, and Sam Lafferty. Neither of them really fantasy relevant. McCabe's a guy that is really good with peripherals, with hits and blocks. But again, like Luke Schenn, the Leafs have the puck a lot, so I don't see those numbers getting better. He's going from Chicago to Toronto. I just don't see. I mean, and again, I kind of like Ekholm. He may luck into some secondary assists here and there. He's not a bad puck mover, but just didn't have anyone to score in Chicago. So maybe his point totals go up a little bit, but not enough to make him fantasy relevant. I think he's a streamer. But the Leafs do have a nice playoff schedule. So in a Bangers Cats league, maybe he is a more relevant stream for a game or two. They have quite a few off nights in the weeks 22 to 24 playoff schedule. So
it's definitely going to be interesting to see how the defensive pairings shake out for Toronto and who becomes valuable for them.
For sure.
Next up in the list, this one may move some needles fantasy hockey wise, especially in a banger league. Tanner Jeannot traded to the Lightning by the Predators for 5 draft picks. which really,
Yeah.
really set Twitter on fire. I know that I talked about Tanner Jeannot as a drop option earlier in the year for the Predators. Do you think that anything sparks for the Lightning? Does he become more fantasy relevant for you just based on the talent around him? Do you think that he will start scoring even a little bit, or is he still just a banger machine and that's it?
I don't think you should expect him to have an offensive outburst. I wouldn't be surprised if he does, just because of vibes, essentially. Like, just because Tampa never makes a bad move, essentially. Like,
Right.
it's kind of one of those things, and they just have that magic. Um, they always acquire these depth players, and then they play the best they've ever played, and then sign long-term contracts somewhere else. And yeah, it's just. But yeah, I don't think I'd be in a huge rush to go out and pick up Tanner Jeannot. He's not going to play in the top six. He's not going to play in the power play. He's going to play in a pretty similar position in the lineup as he did in Nashville. There's just going to be better vibes around him. So
Yeah.
uh,
That's a hell of
I
a
don't
third line for them.
definitely. Oh yeah, definitely. It's not. It's definitely scary.
They're gonna some people up in the playoffs in that third line.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And then we already kind of talked about this, but Timo Meier traded to the Devils from the Sharks. This was a huge deal. Happened a few days ago. I mean, it's great for the Devils. He's going to be. I mean, here's the thing. I don't think anyone is going to be dealing Timo Meier in fantasy. So and quite frankly, I don't know that. I mean, part of what makes Meier so great is he shoots a ton and he hits.
Mm-hmm.
And this is another situation where I think his peripherals are probably going to decrease. New Jersey's a really good team that possesses the puck a ton.
A lot.
He's probably going to play with either Hughes or Hischier. I think probably fits a little bit more with Hischier, just because he's such a high volume shooter, and so is Jack Hughes. But if he plays with Jack Hughes, I could see his shot totals going down as well, because Hughes also likes to shoot the puck. So we'll see. We'll see how that works out. I don't know that his fantasy value increases. His ice time also will probably go down, just because they played the shit out of him in San Jose, and there's just more depth in New Jersey. So great for New Jersey overall. I don't know that Meier's value necessarily increases, but yeah, I mean, that's all I really have to say about that.
It does seem just personal gut feeling as a fantasy manager for Timo Meier. It seems disappointing, right? It doesn't seem like it's going to be a positive situation for him fantasy wise. Speaking of vibes, Jack Johnson traded back to the Avs by the Blackhawks. Not fantasy relevant at all, given Makar being healthy, but as far as the Avs themselves, man, they are getting the band back together for another playoff cup run. We talked about Ivan Barbashev going to the Golden Knights from the Blues. That happened on February 26th. This one really hurts my heart. Evgeny Dadonov to the Stars, who got a goal in his opening game on a nifty move, by the way, for Denis Gurianov. And apparently, Denis Gurianov was highly sought after by more than 5 teams in the league.
Okay.
And Jim Nill sent him to Montreal for a 30-year-old 20-goal scorer with an expiring contract. So, like, the Gurianov experiment in Dallas was clearly over. Like, I really assumed that this would be the end of the run for him. The writing was on the wall. Worth noting, Dadonov, a Pete DeBoer guy. So pretty clearly going to get some burn for the Stars. Immediately, he went into heavy rotation for them and capitalized on it. Looked pretty comfortable with the team. I don't know how to feel about it fantasy-wise. I am excited by Dallas Stars' second-line players for fantasy when the schedule is good. I'm not necessarily excited by Evgeny Dadonov, but I would love to be wrong about that in real hockey and in fantasy hockey.
Yeah, I think a relevant streaming candidate if he's playing in the top 6. That's all I'd really have to say about that. Niederreiter to the Jets. This is pretty fantasy relevant because he's going to
This is
play in the
pretty
top
huge.
6.
Yeah.
Sounds like he may play on the top power play too. So that's if Niederreiter is out there, I'd be picking him up sooner rather than later because that's he's playing in a pretty good situation. I think he was lining up with Scheifele and Wheeler, who I mean really haven't been playing that well lately, but that's still not a bad situation for Niederreiter, and that is certainly a better one than he had in Nashville. And then Vitaly Kravtsov went to the Canucks. Not really fantasy relevant yet. Probably moving forward, maybe. Keith Kincaid went to the Avs from the Bruins. Had the highest save percentage in Boston Bruins history with something like a 960. I think he played maybe 3 games for them. But he was unbelievable. And then another Bruins trade, Dmitry Orlov and Garnet Hathaway to the Bruins. That was a big one. I think not super fantasy relevant. I think Orlov becomes a little more fantasy relevant in a Bangers Cats league. Because, well, I mean, he had 3 points last night. It looked fantastic.
He does go straight to the top pair with McAvoy, so.
Yeah, so that is really nice. He's going to get some ice time, it looks like. So I certainly like that for Orlov. I think that makes him a nice streaming candidate. Boston has a lot of games through the playoff schedule. So
yeah.
I would be looking hard at Dmitry Orlov for sure for a nice little stream there.
Daily Faceoff has him top pairing, second power play, and first penalty kill. So the minutes are just going to be rampant for him until shown otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. That's all the trades that we have, at least in our notes. I'm sure there's probably been more since we started recording, but we're running out of time, so we better just keep on moving. Zero G check-in. We'll do this really quick. Connor Ingram, 13% rostered. He's had a save percentage over 911 of his last 13 games. His season total save percentage is up to 908. The guy is red hot. Vejmelka has struggled lately and could be traded. Like he's been a guy that has been talked about in trade rumors since essentially the start of the season. So, and there's still teams that need goalies out there. So I would be surprised to see him traded. And if he does get traded, I think Ingram's getting a run here going into the end of the year. So definitely a guy to be looking at. Philip Gustafsson, 66% rostered. Obviously, that's gone up considerably. And that's mainly because he started 7 of the last 9 games for Minnesota. They are riding the hot hand right now. And they need to in order to make the playoffs. Like Minnesota is in a dogfight right now. So I think Philip Gustafsson is definitely their 1A at the very least right now. So if he's out there, I'd definitely be looking into picking him up because he's been amazing this year. Eunice Corpusalo, 18% rostered and rising rapidly. Has a 912 on the season with the Columbus Blue Jackets. We already talked about this. I feel like he's probably going to be the starter for LA going forward. So, I mean, if he's out there, definitely. I mean, don't spend capital to try and buy him. But if he is on your free agency, your waiver wire, maybe pick him up, give him a shot, just in case. Because LA's a good team. They just need a goalie. They just need someone to be average. You know what I mean?
We have said that a few times on this show. They just need somebody, and Judith Corpusalo is somebody.
He is definitely somebody. Aiden Hill, 48% rostered. He is back. Brossoit is now hurt and on the IR. Hill is going to just be eating starts for Vegas going forward, so pick him up if you can. Mads Sogard, 14% rostered, has a 919 save percentage in 6 games this year. Cam Talbot is back, but his Mads Sogard's strong play could earn him some starts, and they're probably looking into playing him a little bit just to get him more experience. He has relished in the opportunity. Keep an eye out for pregame lineups because he may be a nice spot start option for the rest of the year, essentially. Jake Allen, 26% rostered, has had a great run since the All-Star break, but the Habs have had a pretty easy schedule. Not sure if you're interested, but he's definitely there, and he's playing a little bit better than he was earlier in the year. Capo Kakinen also becoming a little more relevant. He's 10% rostered, hasn't had a save percentage below 900 in his last 8 games. So 8 straight quality starts for Capo Kakinen. The Sharks are terrible, and they're going to continue to get worse as they offload players. But he's played really well, and he makes a ton of saves because they give up a shit ton of shots.
Yeah.
So
they're going in the direction of Arizona.
And then James Reimer's a guy that has been rumored to be dealt for a long time, although he's struggled and probably doesn't have a lot of trade value. But if he does get dealt, then Kakinen's going to play a ton. And that is it for Zero G Check. And let's go to the mailbag. Let's keep her going. The Pork Man asks, the Curious Mob wants to know, if Edmonton doesn't make any moves, who seizes or gets the first crack at the cube? Oh, I guess we already answered this. It's Bouchard. It's Bouchard. Yeah. It confirmed. It is Evan Bouchard. He has been playing, and actually he just scored a goal for the Oilers against the Leafs. So Oilers are stomping the Leafs right now. It is 5-1. Yikes. And it actually looks like it might be 6-1. So that's not good.
I'm kind of scared to see the score with Dallas against Arizona, because Dallas is playing like trash right now. So I really don't want to know. If you see it, don't tell me.
Okay, I won't. Burrs asked, what are the predictions for what the East playoff matchups will be and who gets through? So it seems like it's almost set in stone.
Yeah.
Other than the wild card spots. The wild card spots are very much up for grabs, but it looks like Carolina and Boston are essentially going to win their respective divisions. The Leafs and Tampa are going to play each other first round. The Rangers and Devils are going to play each other first round. I probably give the Rangers the edge over the Devils, purely based on goaltending.
Really?
Obviously, the Rangers have made big moves. They've got Tarasenko, they got Patrick Kane. They have that Panarin Kane magic, and they've just been strong in general. But they've got Igor Shesterkin, and the Devils have Vanacek, who really hasn't. I mean, he's been pretty up and down. So that's what I look at there. What Vitek Vanacek are we going to get? If it's anything less than, I mean, like 9-10 goaltending, they're fucked. So I think the Rangers will probably move on there. Leafs and Lightning is a wash, man. Like, I don't want to predict that series. Obviously, I'm emotionally invested in it. I think these teams are about as evenly matched as they come, and it's a goddamn shame that they're going to be playing in the first round. It sucks. And then in terms of the wild card teams, I mean, I mean, I think Carolina and Boston are going to beat whoever they play. I don't see any of these teams. I don't know. Who do you think, Binksy? Like, what's your take on the wild card teams? Who do you think is going to get through?
Well, I think Pittsburgh will probably get through and play against Boston. Currently, Carolina is slated to play the Islanders. I don't think the Islanders with injury concerns are going to make it, right? I think it will probably be Buffalo or Florida that manages to make their way through. Either way, I am deferring to the top 6 strength of Carolina in those matchups. I don't think Florida plays good enough defense. I don't think they're consistent enough to win. I don't think Buffalo is experienced enough to win a series against Carolina in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't entirely shock me to see, and it would shock the world, but it wouldn't entirely shock me to see the Penguins eke out a win against Boston in the playoffs, right? Like, Boston has been so consistent all year long, but we are talking about an older team. We are talking about a team that is led by a Vezina candidate in Ullmark, who not a lot of people saw coming, right? So it's entirely possible that falters in the playoff to a veteran team like Pittsburgh. And who knows what kind of goaltending we get from Pittsburgh out of Jari. Like, one game he's amazing and one game he's not. So I think each one of the top seeds in this are more likely to win, except for New Jersey. I don't think that there is a better team right now or a better team come playoff time than the New York Rangers. In those first rounds, my gut is Boston over Pittsburgh. I think it's possible that Pittsburgh wins. My gut is that Toronto finally wins against Tampa. That was my gut last year, and it kind of U-turned in 6 and 7. But I still felt really confident about Toronto. I'll speak for you on your behalf. I feel really good about Toronto. I feel a lot better about their playoff chances given what they've done at the deadline. I think Carolina wins over whoever makes it in against them. And I think New York wins in an absolutely fantastic series over New Jersey.
I hope you're right, man. I hope you're right. The Mark Skinner first question is, how are you going to answer any questions with all this NHL chaos going on? I don't know, man. We're trying our best. It is hard to focus, to be honest. But serious question, though. Give us a quick hit on Ghost value going forward. Should we expect pretty much the same production? Thanks again, as always. We kind of answered this already, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah,
we touched on a lot of these questions.
So we'll move on from that one. Thanks for the question, Mark. Oh, actually, also add Shabbat to that list with Chychrun. There is his value toast. I don't think it's necessarily toast, but if he loses PP1, that certainly hurts. So
I think he will lose PP1.
Yeah, it's very possible.
I think they're going to ask him to play defense and not offense. Yeah.
Yeah. Keep an eye on those. Keep an eye on those lineups. Koo asks, Sanderson dead? Yes.
Yeah.
I think Sanderson is certainly pushed way down the lineup. He's third pair lefty, not going to get any power play time. Confirmed. Fantasy Hockey Professor says, hi, fellas. In a standard Yahoo Points League, roster spots 2C, 2 right wing, 2 left wing, 4D, 2 goalie. Scoring, goals, assists, shots, plus minus, power play points, blocks, wins, goals against, saves, and shutouts. Assuming that you can work your daily rosters so that you don't have many or any players on your bench, what are your thoughts on rostering only 3 D-men down the stretch if you can pick up more productive forwards? Thanks. Why don't you touch on this, Binksy?
Well, it's noteworthy that there are no hits in these point productions. So I'm more likely to say yes to this than to no, given that you're going to just be relying on blocks, right? So if you don't have 4 offensively capable D-men, then sure. But given that your goalie categories are wins, goals against, saves, and shutouts, I might be more likely to go with 3 D-men and not rely on a forward in that spot and move into more streaming goalies, right? We're going to see a lot of shakeups with goalies. We're going to see a lot of veterans ride the pine as they go into the playoffs. And there's going to be a little bit more wiggle room with goalies. So in reference to your question, yes, I think that is an applicable strategy. I think your most important stat is always games played. Given the breakdown for your stats, I might be more inclined to run 3 D-men and open up that slot to streaming more goalies.
Yeah, I guess it would depend on the point value of saves for me, but I would definitely support that. I've definitely gone into the playoffs with 3D in the past in a points league and loaded up on forward. So yeah, I definitely support that. If you can work the rosters out so that you're not sitting sitting important players too much, then yeah, I 100% support that. Fantoma asks, did my overpay of Fiala and Rust for Chychrun to have him sit on the IR for a month pay off? Yeah, I think it did. Yeah. I mean, Fiala, that's tough. I don't know if Fiala and Rust, I don't know, man. That's a really tough one. I think Jacob Chychrun is a premium fantasy defenseman in the league when he's healthy. So it does feel like a bit of an overpay, especially with him being on the IR. But going into the playoffs, you're going to be happy to have him on your team. So I guess
overpay in name, not so much Rust. You know what I mean? I really look at that as a 1-for-1, and
yeah.
You probably had a forward or 2 to burn, to get Chikrin on what is a very dangerous offensive power play, I think that did pay off. So if you had the space to wait, that's a good move.
And you got Chikrin and a streamer spot. That's important.
Yeah.
That's a very important thing to note. Is that you got a streamer spot? It's like the value of cap space in real world hockey trades that needs to be included in there. You know what I mean? Taxi Squad leader says, "I've been happy with I've been a happy Copley owner, but had to pick up Corpusalo in case he takes over the net in LA. Do I drop Copley? I wouldn't do it yet, but I would definitely have my finger on the trigger. That's what I would say. What do you think? What do you think, Binksy?
I'm going to defer to you in this one, man. I trust Copley more than most people do in fantasy hockey, and I don't believe in Corpusalo as much as you seem to. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if that is what happens in Los Angeles. So I think your assessment to be ready to shoot Copley right to the waiver wire is the best one.
Yep. And then Zebra Dan, last week before. Okay, so this is our 5-hole league, just for context. Last week before playoffs, and your fate is almost entirely out of your hands. You need to win. 2 of Kenny, Brad, and Jeff need to lose, and you need to finish with more total points than all of them. Hoping you pull it off so I can beat you in the semis. Do you guys have a fantasy hockey rival? Someone who you always watch the matchup extra close and put that little extra thought into who your pickups will be, or is that just me? So we'll touch on my situation here just for 1 second. I'm going to be selfish for a minute. I blew it last week. I lost to a team that I was competing with. There are, I think, the 4th place to 9th place teams in this league are all within 1 game of each other. It's so tight. I do have more points for than a lot of these teams. So he's right. If 2 of these teams lose, if 2 of those 3 guys that he mentioned lose, I'm probably going to make the playoffs. But I also need to win. I believe I am winning right now. So I'm doing everything I can. I don't know that it's going to work out. I'm crossing my fingers, but it might be over for me after this week in the 5-hole league, which would be really, really sad. But in terms of fantasy hockey rival, I think whenever you play the first place team in your league, that's when I'm focusing extra close, getting nervous, putting extra thought into streaming players. I think whenever I play Nate, that's definitely a factor, just because he's Nate. And I mean, and he's my buddy. We go back for a long time. We've been competing in fantasy hockey for years. So, but then also like the whole Apples and Genos context is that just kind of adds to the rivalry there. So I think, yeah, I put a little extra thought into that. But yeah, and then also there's a few guys. I know I'm in a couple leagues with Reese's Pieces right now. He's a really good fantasy hockey
player. He is
a
really good manager. It's funny you say that,
yeah,
because every time I pull a matchup with him, I'm like really motivated to beat him, and I don't.
definitely.
He beats me. So
definitely the Mark Skinner as well is doing really well, and what me and him have been duking it out in our Keep 3 league.
He is going wild right now with trades in that Keep 3 league. I think he's got 3 being approved right now, like going nuts right now.
Yeah, trying to. Yeah, it's crazy. I have a bunch pending, and no one's getting back to me. So if you're out there and you got a trade offer from me, like fucking let me know, because we're getting down to the wire. We have less than 2 hours until the deadline, so it's not. We gotta get to biz, as Blake would say. So what about you? Do you have a fantasy hockey rival, Binksy?
Man, I have 2. One of them is Nate. God, I want to beat Nate so bad every time. I don't even have any vitriol or spite for Nate. I think he's a super excellent dude. I'm really happy to be here with the brand. But more than anything, like he just crushes fantasy hockey, and I really want to beat him. I'd want to beat you, but I don't know. We just have such great camaraderie that I'm like happy for you if you win. Nate, on the other hand, I'm not happy for Nate if Nate wins.
You also did. We matched up. We faced each other once in that Keep 3, and you beat me, and it's one of my only losses this year.
That's right.
So,
Raj from Five Hole is pissed at me that I'm still towing the line for playoffs in that Keep 3, even though my points for are like I should be like 4 slots lower in win.
I think
loss.
you're below 500 too.
Yeah,
in your record, yeah, but you're in that last playoff spot.
It's been a really trying year. Like week to week, I have been in it, and I've lost to people like Marky and Reese's.
Yeah.
As far as my home league, he's kind of the godfather of the league. He owns a bar and music venue here in Dallas. His name is Scott. He's a wonderful dude. I love the guy. He's like 15, 20 years older than me. So he's like the pappy of our fantasy hockey league. And I just want to beat him so badly because he's taken home 2 championships in a row. And both times I was in the playoffs and just goose egged against him. And on top of that, he has my favorite fantasy hockey team name ever. So there's a lot of factors that just really make me hate losing to him. But his team name is Five Hole Donnybrook. And in our group chat, he refers to his team in the third person, and that also wildly upsets me. So there's just so many reasons that I just want to beat him so badly and then show up at his bar and be like, hey, how are you? But no, I really love him, and for the same reasons as Nate. Like he's an excellent fantasy hockey manager. He's a good dude, and for both of those reasons, I just want to drive him into the ground, fantasy hockey wise.
I think that's fair. I think that's totally fair. That is all we have for today. Check out the Apples and Ginos Discord server. Shout outs to the band. They're there for providing our music. Their Spotify link is in the episode description. Give us a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter. Binksy is at Binklemania. Nate is at Apples Ginos. Blake is at Blake Creamer SE. And I'm at Just Joshin 41. Please practice safe stats and happy streaming. Have a good one, folks.
Good night, world.